Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Today we want to talk about pets. Each and every one of us who happen to have that endearing pet that sits by our side dedicatedly and unconditionally giving us love, we want to be sure that its safety and its health is our top priority. On the program today, we're going to be talking with someone who is an animal communicator. She is author of the book Communication with All Life, Revolutions of an Animal Communicator. She is also the founder of Communication with All Life University, and through private sessions, workshops, teleseminars, and speaking events, she facilitates a deepening of the human-animal connection. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Joan Ranquet. Joan, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, how did all this animal communication start with you? Was this just something that you picked up as you were a child and kind of ran with it ever since?
You know, that is such a great question because the truth is yes and no.
I like when I get a yes and a no answer usually.
Yeah. I think, you know, I was really connected to animals, but I didn't necessarily know I was communicating with them. And later in life, I had used an animal communicator in about, it was 1989, I think was the first time I used one. And I had a horse. I was living in Los Angeles, and I had a communicator talk to my horse. And through the course of it, I, was just fascinated by the whole thing. And I was still pretty invested in, I was an actress and a writer, and I, had a little career envy when I saw what she could do, but I wasn't in any way, shape, or form ready to jump ship on what I was doing. But I used her a few more times, and then when I had a pretty significant crisis, I used her. And later on, I took a class with another communicator and found it was, I was pretty good at it. And I ended up taking more classes, and sooner than later, I was suddenly thrown into this world and kind of out of the other world. So it took over my life. So when I look back on my childhood, I was communicating with them, but I didn't necessarily, I just thought I really loved them or that I kind of knew what they wanted. But it was definitely that communication.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there something to animal communication here, or is it just sort of our perception of what we believe an animal is thinking and saying and feeling?
Yes, it would be our perception. Getting quiet and being able to pick up on pictures, words, and feelings. I'd say that getting quiet, having a little bit of a meditation background is maybe the only hard part. But trusting yourself that you're getting the pictures, words, and feelings from the animals is really the whole key.
Now, the animals that you work with, what would you say was if there is one animal that seems to be the easiest to communicate with?
Well, I think that, horses, dogs, and cats are the easiest because horses, people have a working relationship with their horses. They either show their horses or it's their recreation and their pleasure, and so their horses end up, carrying a whole lot of secrets on behalf of the person. And the other thing about horses, if we think about, like, people love to say that dog is man's best friend, but the truth is we built civilization with horses, and so they're pretty willing partners, if you will. Whereas, I joke that dogs moved into the caves with us because it was just easier for them to get dinner. And then, of course, cats are the forgotten royalty. But, because dogs and cats live with us intimately, they're also very easy to connect with.
Yeah, I remember it seems like I was reading somewhere about wolves that had wolves not come along to help mankind, we probably wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, and I still think they're just great opportunists.
Yeah, that too, probably. Now, you also, as you do animal communication, I'm sure you also help bridge the connection between I guess the owner and the pet itself. How does that come about when you, I guess, are called to duty?
Well, when I go over to someone's house, or if I also, a couple days a week, I sit in my own office with all my animals around, and people email me pictures of their animals. And so if, let's say the other day, I went over to someone's house whose cat had been 18, had hypothyroid. She was at a point where she was, the cat was still looking alive in the eyes, but the body was kind of deteriorating. And the cat had been urinating in the house as a result of her illness, or his illness. And so that was frustrating for the woman because, of course, and her kids were taking it personally if their stuff got peed on. But the truth is that the cat couldn't help himself. And at a certain point, what was great about her making the decision to have me come over that day is, you want your last days with someone to be loving and not frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really, we really turned, even though he, still had this challenge and was probably going to urinate if he wasn't kept in a specific space, we really turned that around for her so that she remembered all the fun and loving things before she was married and, had kids and before the dog and before, that unique relationship she had with this guy. So that was really a great, that felt really good when I walked out the door, knowing that they got there to that loving point.
I think what's fascinating, too, about animals is that they just don't lie about things. I don't know that they even know what that language is, although they can be deceptive, probably.
They can be very deceptive, like, who pooped in the hallway? Oh, not me.
Yeah, I've got things to do. I don't even know how that got there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I noticed that as I was on your website that you actually had a background in theater. And I wonder, do you ever do theatrical productions with the pets that you have?
That is really funny.
Little Shakespeare in the Round with a pug and a couple of golden retrievers. Who knows?
Exactly. Well, we have a musical number almost every other morning here. And I'm not kidding. So a couple days a week I hike with my dogs, and then 3 days a week I jump rope. But it really means that I've got disco music on, and the dogs drop the ball in front of me where I'm jumping rope, and if I miss the rope, then I have to kick the ball, and they chase it. But a lot of times we will dance. I literally will sing and dance, and the minute I put music on, they actually are like ready to do stuff. And so we have a couple little like numbers that we do, like I can get them all to back up, and so yeah, sometimes I think, God, that would make such a funny video.
Mm-hmm.
So we aren't doing Shakespeare in the Round, but we're definitely doing some MTV-style productions.
Richard Simmons sweating to the disco hits in the background.
I'm not kidding. It would pretty fun, you know. And it's unique, and I think it's a great way to work out with your pets.
Now, as you've been in animal communication for as long as you have, what have been some of the most unique circumstances that you can recall where you have helped someone in the facilitation of animal communication?
I think one of the things I've loved doing, in 1998 I got to go to MSNBC, brought me out to the Kentucky Derby, and I got to talk to all the horses before the race. And I get to go I take people up to go talk to, in Seattle here, in the Seattle area, we have a wildlife center called Sarve, and there's an eagle there named Freedom. And actually a book was written about Freedom by a guy named Jeff Guidry, and his book is called An Eagle Named Freedom. Well, I take people up to go talk to Freedom, and Jeff had basically saved Freedom's life. She can't ever fly, so she couldn't live in the wild. But then later on, he had cancer, and she really saved his life. So
wow,
it's a really cool connection that they have, and he's really wonderful about letting me bring my classes teaching a little class there, is that there's an eagle that's right next to her, and that eagle is very, very funny. So what's wonderful about these eagles is you get to see the distinct personality differences, because Freedom is like this elegant, she can be, very, 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 very giving to her public, and then like just out of nowhere this little diva will say, okay, take me back to my flight.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the other eagle, you bring her food, you bring her like Jeff will toss a turkey wing in and or a turkey bone in, and the other eagle will jump on her toys in excitement. So, it's just funny. So I just love seeing that there's that much, developed personalities in these eagles. So that just blows my mind.
Mm-hmm. I was curious, how did Freedom save this person's life?
He had dreams. First of all, she was a constant companion. He's married, so of course his wife was very integral in that too. But she was she came to him in his dreams and would fly in, swoop in, and eat the cancer cells.
Oh, okay.
And she never could fly, so that was really, a wonderful, magical dream that happened a lot.
Fascinating stuff. Now, people take workshops so they can learn what I would consider to be the art of animal communication. What are some of the first things people learn when they come to do this?
That they can do it. I think that there's a part of certainly women and probably even a lot of men that, when you're little, there's that little magical part of you that says, oh my God, or my cat or my horse. And I think that this kind of brings people back to that sense, but it also brings up a lot of fear and doubts, because we've covered and masked those original dreams pretty early on. So I think that people get blown away that they can do it, and that how easy it is, and especially I create a really safe environment, so people feel free to be able to express the senses that they, the sensations they got, whether it was a feeling or pictures. And by, on a 3-day weekend, by Sunday, people are, having pretty significant conversations with animals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're getting a lot of detailed information.
It's always fascinating when you realize that something you felt only a few gifted people were able to do, that you were able to do yourself, and kind of makes you look at other limitations you've imposed on your life, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And that's the thing, is people that, I have a lot of weekend workshops, and then I have a program for people to become animal communicators. And the thing, I think, one woman went through my whole program, and I said, well, are you going to, I always try to help people get their little business started. And she said, no, I'm going to stick to banking for now. She said, but it's been a wonderful soul's growth period for me. So, that's a great thing to hear.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating stuff. Now, are you able to help people with missing animals? And how's that worked out?
I am. I don't do that as much. I let a couple of my graduates do that because they're really good at it, and it's I can only get the pictures, words, and feelings from the animal in that immediate local area that they are. I might be able to get a sense of the journey they went on. I always tell people that if I could read street signs, I'd be a billionaire, because I could say, well, it's on 3rd and Cherry.
Now, do you believe that animals also make a psychic connection as well? I mean, it sounds like, from what you were describing in Freedom, that something like that was going on.
Yeah, I believe that we have really karmic relationships with animals, just like we do with people.
Mm-hmm.
There's I joke when people that knew my father come in to my house, And I have a picture of my dad, and I have a new dog. She's about a year and a half, and I've had her, for, since she was a baby. And when people come in, I take a picture. I hand them the picture of my dad and say, "Now look at my dog," and because they have the same eyes. But so there's just always that little reminder here and there of my dad, and that's not to say that I think my dog is my dad, but it's almost like there's just this funny little creature that's here to remind me of the funny things of my dad, and so that's a soulful relationship. But I have just a deep soulful relationship with other animals here in my household also, and I think, most people when they have me talk to their animals, a lot of times I'll just say right off the bat, "So this is your cat soulmate," and I'll be like, "Yes." So.
Fascinating stuff. I take a look at you have a wonderful website here that is rich in information, and I know, do you still host your own radio talk show?
I don't right now. I'm thinking about doing it again. I love doing it.
Now, was that something that you had people call in with questions?
Yeah.
Okay, and what were some of the questions that you would get from people?
Oh, people would call in with, I would do kind of mini sessions. They just definitely like to know about their animals.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's generally an easygoing animal for someone to have, I guess, as far as an owner who may be busy, for instance?
There's, I guess, some of the, like the labs and some of the smaller dogs. The thing I look at, like, some of your terriers or your border collies or, any of the collies, they're so smart, and it doesn't mean that, you have to live on 30 acres to have border collies, but it means you have to be pretty active and create a program with your animal. I mean, you could have a border collie in the city as long as you're, out running and just, maybe doing agility on Saturdays, but an easier pet would be something more like, your labs, a cat. A cat is a wonderful companion. They need to be engaged also, but, they're easy.
I think what's funny about cats is when they get in trouble, they find a way to disappear just long enough to where you get worried, and then that's when they show back up.
Exactly.
Dogs will stand there and they'll take the beating or whatever it is that you plan to do, but, the cats are like, "Forget this. I'm out of here."
Exactly.
I think it was John Wayne that said it best in True Grit. Oh, cats don't really belong to anybody. They're just kind of their own person, so to speak.
Yeah. We're lucky if we get to live with them.
Exactly. Now, tell us about your book.
Communication with All Life, Revelations of an Animal Communicator is my first book, and it came out with Hay House. And it's a book on, the first part of it, I tell, a lot of stories about animal communication and a little bit about how I became an animal communicator. And so I have tons of stories in there to illustrate how animal communication works. And then the second half is a little more of a how-to. I've got tons of I have a little bit of instruction on animal communication, but I also have some little fixes for, common challenges. Like, let's say you have animals that aren't getting along. A lot of times, if it's dogs, aside from bringing in a dog trainer, one little thing that I have people do is, put a picture of, if you don't have a picture of your animals sleeping on the same couch or next to each other on the floor, then superimposing that into, one photo so that you've got both of your animals there in a completely relaxed state next to each other, and then making lots of copies of that picture and putting that picture around the house so that you subliminally are retraining your brain that your animals can get along. That's a really handy little thing because that is a really great thing because a lot of our challenges in our household are as a result of our hanging on to a thought.
Oh, wow. So animals really pick up on this stuff, as I was suggesting earlier about that idea of being psychic, if you will.
Yeah, they definitely, they're always tracking us. If you think about, let's say, a wild pack of dogs, and there's a leader, and it's not like they're always like, hey, boss, what are we going to do? They've got, an ear on the leader. They've got an eye on the leader. They've got a feeling of, oh, we've got to go. We're moving camp. They aren't necessarily going, hey, what's going on? They are in tune, so to speak. So in our household, we are that leader. We are, hopefully, we are that one that they are, that they're always in tune with. And so they're picking up on our pictures, words, and feelings, and trying to figure out what's going on.
Fascinating. Now, I know that there's one difficult stage that you help people to deal with, and that's when animals are coming to the end stages of their lives. And recently, it seems, maybe it's because I brought in a new dog into my life, all of a sudden you start talking to a lot of people. It certainly helps when that happens, because he just happens to attract that kind of attention. Oh, what a great dog. He's a pug, actually.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, very large, a lot of people say anyway. But we start hearing stories from people who, get into situations where, they're getting what seem to be like adult diseases and sicknesses, or human sicknesses, excuse me. And there are some cases that become heartbroken because they just say, for instance, my dog got this cancer and I just couldn't afford what it would cost, to be able to treat this animal. And a lot of times they were just kind of guessing what it was in the first place. And so I had to put it down, and you can just see the anguish and the heartbreak of someone who sort of felt helpless to save their animal. What has it been like for you to work with people who deal with really tough situations like that?
I do a bit of that. It seems like every day there's as much fun as my job is. Every day there's a tough situation like that. And one thing I feel really honored, first and foremost, to be able to be that person that the other human trusts, and that the animal, will then. It's an honor to be in that situation. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I like about that is, like the other day, reminding that woman, that the story I told in the beginning, that reminding that woman who that cat was for her. He's not that, frail body right now. He's had a whole full life, and he's 18, and the peeing was only in the last year. So, getting back to who that guy is in his soul was really a great thing to, she can have some peace with, when the time comes, having to put him down, because there was, she came full circle with who he is. The other thing is, I like to remind people that, when you're poking and prodding these animals in a lot of ways, I always tell people that when the pet psychic is telling you that you're anthropomorphizing, you're in big trouble. But the thing with some of these diseases is, those animals wouldn't survive in the wild like that. And I think it's great that through modern medicine we can reattach an arm, that we can do a lot of things. But there's some things that even for humans that I think are just go way beyond, and I don't know that some of those treatments really give that much of a quality of life. And,
right.
And I hate even saying that, because I hope I'm not tested with that one tomorrow. But, the truth is, sometimes our animals are at advanced ages, and it would not only be expensive, but really hard on their system.
Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of a story. In fact, we had adopted our dog back in December. Very healthy. He's a 4-year-old. But within the time leading up to this particular adoption, my wife had never had the experience of owning a dog before. So she came across a picture of one that she was interested to go and see, and it happened to be at a place which was also a place where people take their dogs, for overnight stays, things like that. And was also a place where they were adopting some dogs out as well. So we went to go and see this dog, and the first thing the lady says is, well, let me tell you about this animal before you consider, or I even bother to bring her out. And she was about, I think it was 7 years old, and the owners had actually surrendered her to this place because there were a lot of stomach problems, and they were paying just a lot of these vet bills to keep this animal going, and they just couldn't afford, I guess, to do it anymore. And I said, well, in that case, I think we would be better off just not seeing the dog at all, because I was kind of thinking ahead. The last thing you want to feel like, is, even as a person, is that you're about to be sprung, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that somebody's just not interested, and so you're going back to the can, so to speak. Well, I was trying to explain this to my wife. I said, I really don't want to see the dog because I was already set, 7-year-old with those kind of problems. I'm not interested, We can all try to be altruistic and do that good thing, but the truth is I think you would suffer just as much as the dog does. That's just my thought. But she kept being insistent, and I was actually upset because she didn't realize what she was about to do to the dog as a result, which was to create even deeper depression, which the lady said the dog was having. So sure enough, she had to be adamant, and I was, by then I was just almost ready to walk out. But so the dog comes out, looks at it, and she's kind of looking at me like, well, what do you think? And I said, no, the dog is not going home with us. It's just that simple. And, as much as you don't like to say anything like that, it was just the truth. And the dog could tell just at one particular point, this ain't happening, curled up over to the feet of the lady by her desk, and then that was the end of it. And my wife, of course, got upset. I said, look, that's a really bad experience for a person who's never had a dog to have, is a dog with those kinds of problems. And I said, when the right one comes along, you're going to know it. And when that does happen, you're going to be glad that I made you wait, a little bit. And sure enough, that has happened. And she goes, I could have never imagined. But I said, you see before what I was talking about, what are your thoughts on a situation like that where somebody feels they're coming in to rescue an animal that's in a situation like that?
Well, I think that one of the things that, first and foremost, there's so many easy fixes to stomach problems. So I wish that those people that had originally had that dog would have looked at, some alternative medicine techniques. But what I feel like there's, in the right circumstance with the right rescues, they're really patient. And just as your wife is looking for that right dog, that dog is going to find its right people. And I work with a lot of different rescues and shelters, and one of the things that I love about that this one shelter here says, they say that they would rather hold a dog until the right person comes along. They would rather have the dog be there with them than in an unhappy circumstance in their original home. So I think that you can just always hope that that dog gets the right situation. And usually they do.
Now, tell us about your website. People can obviously find out quite a bit from you there, as I did.
Well, I've got, my schedule up there. I've got lots of, years ago I did stuff on, like, Good Morning America, so I have all my old press up there. And I have some videos and information on my books. Oh,
very good. And I know that you also teach classes through the university that you've created.
Yes, and I teach teleseminars, and it's so funny. I love when, like today at 11, I've got a class, and it just blows my mind that I can get a bunch of strangers on the phone and we can talk to my dog.
Ah, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, your book is Communication with All Life, Revelations of an Animal Communicator, and your website again?
Is just joanranquet.com.
Oh, very good. Joan, what a pleasure to have you here on the Beyond 50 radio program. I think our audience has become more enlightened about the fact that they can communicate with their pets.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there. You can find out more about that also by visiting us at beyond50radio.blogspot.com. We'll have a hot link up there for you as well, so you can learn how to communicate with your pet. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.